the whole time that the President is here, we would like to request you to refrain from using flash photography.
Audio check. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency Benigno Aquino III, President of the Republic of the Philippines. Please be seated. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Semiconductor and Electronics Industries in the Philippines Foundation, Inc. 14th CEO Forum, our afternoon session, with the theme Bayanihan, Building a Sustainable Future for the Philippine Electronics Industry. At this point, I would like to call on the President of SEIPI, or the Semiconductor and Electronics Industries in the Philippines Foundation President, Mr. Danilo Lachica, to give his welcome remarks and to present the SEIPI report.
Thank you, Cherry. His Excellency President Benigno Simeon Aquino III, Cabinet Secretaries, members from the government offices of DTI, PEZA, BOI, and BOC, SEIPI trustees, captains of the industry, our members and friends from the media, good afternoon. Welcome to the second half of the SEIPI CEO Forum and General Membership Meeting. We are very honored that His Excellency continues to find time to grace our annual CEO's Forum. This is the fourth time you have accorded our event with your presence, and it feels bittersweet this time around, for this will be the last CEO Forum of SEIPI where we can address you as His Excellency, President of the Republic of the Philippines. The importance and attention you have given to the electronics industry are undeniable. These were manifested in concrete programs and investments for the industry, such as DOST's Advanced Device and Material Testing Laboratory, the Philippine Institute of Integrated Circuits, and the Philippine Electronics Products Development Center to improve our technological capabilities, and one for the Continuous Training Fund for Scholarship through TESDA, which provided employment and capacity building for 3,425 Filipinos as of August 2015 year-to-date, and of whom 3,302 are employed for a 96.5% hiring rate. And of course, you've also sponsored the IC Design Study and Industry Roadmaps through DTI to provide direction to the Philippine electronics industry in terms of moving towards higher value activities. Your appointment of Commissioner Alberto Lina as head of BOC, who we know truly understands the nature of our operations, and the authority you have vested on Director General De Lima of PEZA to champion the cause of the electronics industry. We have heard many say that 6 years is too short of a time to make a significant contribution to the economy. While this may be true, you did so for the electronics industry, and we cannot thank you enough for these legacies. The first time you met with the industry as the country's president was in 2010 in Malacanang. Our sector's exports then was at an all-time high of $31.08 billion. However, the industry is not immune to external factors such as the soft global demand caused by some weak global economies. Exports progressively dropped to $23.93 billion by 2013. We saw a slight recovery when electronics exports went up to $26.79 billion last year. This year, we have already registered a total exports of $18 billion for the first 8 months of the year. If this trend continues, we could close the year as high as $26 billion of export, anywhere from up to 4% growth. This assumes that we resolve current issues such as the PNP chemicals list implementation, heavy traffic, and the potential port congestion during the holidays. Mr. President, the industry is just beginning to slowly recover, and yet our export performance for the remaining months are facing imminent danger. A memorandum recently published by PNP on the inclusion of 41 controlled chemicals commonly used is making it a challenge for companies to import chemicals used in their daily operations, as the memorandum directs companies to secure separate licenses to purchase, unload, move, possess, and even have to pay unreceipted escort fees amounting to thousands of dollars if computed annually. As an interim solution, temporary permits valid only through October 31, 2015 were issued to companies, just to give them time to apply for the regular permits. Unfortunately, until now, legitimate companies are still waiting for their regular permits to be processed and run the risk of shutdowns if not closures. PNP announced that once the permits expire, companies without regular licenses will be charged with illegal possession of contraband. If not immediately addressed, this situation threatens to paralyze not only electronics companies, but other industries as well. This could approach the magnitude of the economic impact caused by the port congestion last year. So we humbly implore for His Excellency's immediate action to solve this national concern. In a study conducted by PwC, the Philippines ranked 128th among 189 economies in terms of ease in paying taxes. Thailand ranked 62nd and Malaysia 32nd. It takes 193 hours for a businessman to pay 36 kinds of fees and taxes per year. Our member companies take 60 to 110 days just to apply and receive their import permits and licenses. If we truly want to encourage investors, we need to streamline the processes. We believe that the national single window can help reduce the steps into an ideal number, and we would also like to encourage that related government agencies automate their permit processes to standardize and synchronize. With the remaining 8 months of your term, we believe that many actions can still be taken to boost the competitiveness of the Philippines. We hope that the foundation that you have laid for the matuwid na daan will inspire and be continued by the next administration. On behalf of SEIPI, its Board of Trustees, and our member companies, we would like to extend our deepest gratitude for your continued support to the Philippine electronics industry. Thank you once again for honoring us with your presence. We wish you success in your future endeavors, and may God's abundant blessings be upon you always.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lachica. At this point, may I call on the Secretary of the Presidential Communications Operations Office, Honorable Sonny Coloma, to introduce our guest of honor and speaker. Let's give him a round of applause.
Ladies and gentlemen and friends from SEIPI, His Excellency Benigno S. Aquino III, President, Republic of the Philippines.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. Please sit down. Secretary Mel Sarmiento, who I'm sure was paying attention to the complaint with regards to the chemicals. Secretary Sonny Coloma, Dr. Dan Lachica, President Director General Lilia de Lima, the BOC Commissioner Bert Lina, who was also paying attention to the question of the import permits, Board of Trustees, members and staff of the Semiconductors and Electronics Industries and the Philippines Foundation, Inc., honored guests. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Those who have known me since my youth can attest to the irony of my speaking before a gathering of experts in the semiconductor and electronics industry. As a high school student, Latin was replaced with practical electronics, and I was tasked to assemble a radio. Thereupon, I promptly managed to burn 2 fingers with a soldering iron. As if that were not enough, I ended up using so much soldering lead just to try and make the firm connection, only to have my professor the following day say how flimsy the solder was and proceed to remove the component that was witness to my blood, sweat, and tears. Honestly, I wanted to box my professor because I felt like he failed to appreciate the sacrifice that went into assembling that particular radio, which unfortunately was tuned to receive only one station, AM at that. Thankfully, due to the stress-relieving qualities of music, since then I've become a true enthusiast and I'm equipped, or better equipped, to converse with you using your vocabulary. For instance, as many of you might know, over the past few years, music has become increasingly digitized, whether in terms of recording or playback. This naturally concerns your industry. Digital to analog converters, for instance, utilize semiconductors and various other integrated circuits. Quite recently, I was quite saddened by a review I recently read which spoke of the termination of a production of a certain chip. The author, who has a preference for multi-bit digital to analog converters, said that he feels the audio world is increasingly becoming a one-bit boat. I mention this primarily because yours is a very competitive industry, where innovation is the name of the game. Semiconductors are in so many devices that we use today. What were previously relatively rudimentary appliances are now getting smarter and smarter. I am told that in certain cases, they are smarter than the people operating them. I need not tell you about all the various uses of your devices, but suffice it to say, there is an increasing pressure to fit more and more computing power into smaller and smaller chips. It reminds me of the importance of gatherings like this, where individuals can share their knowledge on how to move our semiconductors and electronics industry forward. This is the reason why, over the course of my administration, I've always made it a point to attend this event. You have been very able partners in reviving not just the manufacturing sector, but the Philippine economy at large, and consequently in empowering the Filipino people. The evidence of our successful partnership is clear as day, and perhaps the greatest example is your work with the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority. Time and again, whether here or abroad, I have pointed to our cooperation as one of the best examples of what can be achieved when the public and private sector work together. Last year, I spoke about how TESTA graduated 1,994 scholars for work in your industry, 96% of whom found employment. This year, the number of graduates has grown to 3,423, and we have managed to maintain the employment rate. Rest assured, we remain committed to completing the training of 5,172 scholars, and we will strive to sustain, if not improve, on the employment rate. We also often speak of helping our industries move up the value chain, and I'm proud to say that we have reinforced our words with action. You already know of ADMATEL, or the Advanced Device and Materials Testing Laboratory, which gives electronics companies an option to have failure analysis and materials characterization done here instead of shipping their products abroad to do it. The turnaround time for this process is also much faster. I understand taking only 24 hours compared to 5 to 6 days when done outside the country. The number of companies availing of ADMATEL services have quickly risen from 34 in 2013 to 88 in 2014 and to 179 as of September of this year. And may I add, as warranted, we will increase their facilities. This year, we also integrated the Electronics Product Development Center, which allows for electromagnetic compatibility testing for our electronic products. This means safer products that can more easily meet international standards, and I'm hopeful that you will also avail of the services that EPDC will offer. Whenever I think of the semiconductors and electronics industry in the Philippines, it always confirms my belief in the power of partnerships between government and the private sector. I will only be in office for the next 8 months, and over the course of my term, you have been one of the best partners we could have asked for. You took a chance on us, you trusted that we would be true to our word, you devoted your time and your resources to help us generate the necessary skill sets for the labor you need. You were one of the first to take us up on our offer to help different industries, and our willingness to trust in and work with one another has obviously paid off. Now we can look back with justified smiles on our faces, given all the opportunities we have been able to capitalize on and the foundations we have laid for a future of greater possibilities. Next year, my bosses, the Filipino people, will be voting on whether or not they want to continue the progress we have made. Given all that we have achieved together as one unified nation, I am convinced of their resolve to sustain our upward trajectory born of good governance and reform. My only hope is that when the time comes for me to step down, you will work even more closely with my successor to continue our progress, to move Philippine manufacturing into the global spotlight, and ultimately to allow us to bequeath to future generations a Philippine economy and, more importantly, a Philippine nation that is much more vibrant than we found it. Thank you. Good day.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I can say that this industry is very appreciative of the past 5 years that you've been in office and looking forward to the next 8 and to the next president who will be handed that responsibility. Okay, I'm happy to announce that the president has agreed to accept and answer a few questions from some of our industry leaders. Sir, I'm going to call on the first person who wants to ask the question now. Mr. Larry Kwa from Ionics EMS has a question for the president. Go ahead, Mr. Kwa.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. My question is, with several regulating agencies overseeing the movement of chemicals in the country, PDEA, PMP, DENR, FDA, what policies can we implement to make sure that bureaucracy will not affect the ease of doing business in the Philippines?
From day one, we have tried to make all of the processes as much as possible conform to the one-stop concept of operations. So thank you for reminding us of all of these different agencies that you have to deal with. And I'm sure that several secretaries are present, and those that are not will be told that there has to be that coordination amongst them to, again, try to further minimize the processes that you have to go through, and perhaps as much as possible integrate all of the databases to have that one-stop concept fully implemented. Okay. And thank you for this reminder.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kwa, for that question. Mr. Richard Gohan from Maxim Integrated. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for gracing our event and all you've done for the country and our industry. It's much appreciated. My question is, with the high cost of power, bureaucracy, and inferior infrastructure being only some of the issues that the private sector sees as hurdles in attracting investments, what are the offsetting factors that you identify? How do you promote the Philippines abroad as a good choice for investments? And what do you think are the country's competitive edge, other than the well-known good quality of our people?
You have quite an extensive list of questions. I have 2 or 3 pages of answers to this. And let me try to summarize all of them. Well, first, infrastructure. We agree that there is, like a lot of the developing world, there is a lot of infrastructure that has to be done. But I think you are witness to the logic of the infrastructure that we have put in place. For instance, there is, of course, the development of the various seaports, the airports, and of course, the road infrastructure. In the Metro Manila area alone, some of our political rivals are saying that we are constructing too many projects at the same time that leads to the traffic. Well, I guess you'd want the inconvenience done as shortly as possible and have all of this infrastructure in place, be it rail, be it the road network. The idea of trying to move the utilization of ports to both Subic and Batangas to service Luzon, to decongest the Manila port, is also, again, another example of the same. Tourism was identified as a low-lying fruit that can be fully utilized, but if you cannot go to the tourism sites, then it's pointless. Or if you have to spend a significant portion of your vacation time just traveling to these vacation sites. Secretary Singson, in one of our conversations, told me something to the effect that it seems that there is no waterfall that does not have a road leading to it already by this time. Now, where is the competitiveness besides the labor? That's where I will have to consult the list that is very extensive. You have, we have had several agreements already ratified under administration. The European Union GSP Plus status has been given to the country. This affords us easier access to the European Union's market, which is already drawing certain investors into our shores, because I understand in ASEAN, we're, I think, the only country that has been given this particular status, this tariff preferences. You have well, the investment in terms of education to provide further improvements in the skill sets and the knowledge sets that our workers are going to be in possession of. For instance, there are two, I think, very, very significant companies. One American, one Japanese. The specific names of these companies I cannot mention for fear that I might be violating either their Securities and Exchange regulations or ours. No, I'm not sure exactly to what extent they have had disclosures. But both of these companies are setting up research and development facilities within the Philippines. No? They believe that the Japanese firm asked if we would be able to provide a couple of hundred personnel in the masteral and doctoral levels for engineering. And the DOST assures us that there are thousands that are qualified for those particular positions. The other, the American entity also, no, it has no presence yet, is about to set up a presence, not just in manufacturing, but also wants to induce or to introduce the research and development facility for their own particular brands in the country. Again, cognizant that there is a healthy environment that will continue to propel them to being the leaders in their particular sectors of society. The issue of our electricity is becoming more reasonable, and the supply is becoming more abundant, to include even Mindanao. I can give you the exact figure of how many megawatts are committed and already, well, okay. You have also the Philippines' own market of 100 million, to include also access to ASEAN for the rest of the 500 million market of ASEAN. Okay. And again, so many different free trade agreements are in process. Currently, I think we only have one in existence with Japan, which we inherited. But now there are several. Unfortunately, Secretary Domingo, who is negotiating all of these things, is not present. But I don't know if Lilia, you can talk about some of these other free trade agreements that are in the process. No? There are so many names that I have to memorize. No? One is EU, but there is another set of 4 European countries that are not part of the EU that has another free trade agreement that's also in the works. By the way, we also had to add quite a significant number of personnel to do the actual negotiations, no? Which is in itself evidence of the fact that there are so many countries that are, and associations that want us in partnership in various free trade agreements, whereas before there was no interest whatsoever. You have also the laws that will make, for instance, inter-island shipping that much more efficient. The amendments for the cabotage law. The banks, the opening of the banking sector to make it easier for various entities and their financing or their accustomed financing partners to do business within the country. We are actually inaugurating the first one that applied under this liberalization of our banking sector. I can go on and on, but I think you get the general idea.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next one who's going to ask a question is Mr. Efren Alberto from Moog Controls.
Magandang hapon, no?
Good afternoon.
I have a question on foreign direct investment. Our nearest neighbor to the south, Indonesia, announced in 2014 that the FDI, their FDI totaled $37 billion, which was a 16% increase from the previous year. Their most popular sector for FDI in 2014 was the electronics industry, and they had $2.5 billion. Compared to that, last year, the Philippines only attracted $1.3 billion worth of investment in the electronics industry. So the question is, may we know what is the administration's strategy in the to catch up with our ASEAN neighbors and, if possible, exceed? How can the administration help in attracting more foreign direct investment in the electronics industry? You know, it's been a while since a full-blown Philippine electronics industry roadshow abroad was staged. Can the administration, through the DTI, BOI, and probably PESA, organize a full-blown campaign for the electronics industry?
You put me in a very difficult position when you say that I have to compare the Philippines to Indonesia, and we have very good relations with Indonesia. No? If I say that the prospects for the Philippines are looking better because such and such condition exists in Indonesia, I think President Widodo will take exception to these comments, and I'm meeting him next month in Malaysia during the ASEAN Summit. So let me try to just highlight what the Philippines has been doing. Okay? Number one, we're late. No? Indonesia started, amongst other things, really liberalizing their economy about 10 years ahead of us. So this is already bearing the fruits of that 10-year effort where they were ahead of us. Second, what is, I think, very important to note is that under our watch, the foreign direct investment figure has grown 6 times, or 600% in general. So we're behind by at least 10 years from them, but the foreign direct investments is roughly half of what they achieved. If they are more mature, then I think it is significant that we are not given a mere percentage, meaning 2 decimal points, or 2 positions beyond the decimal point. But in fact, we are catching up, as evidenced already by the numbers. Now, perhaps just to give you, anything I say might tend to be self-serving. So let me just give you the comments we received after the Forbes Global CEO Conference, which was held quite recently. We were told that the participants could be grouped into 2. Those who were already here but somehow had neglected us over this whole series of decades, and they were saying they're very surprised to see the change in the country. There was a second group that said, why weren't they aware of all of the developments that have been happening in the country, that they have been, in effect, late in joining the bandwagon and joining us in the growth and the profitability. And there was a third group that basically said something similar, that they should have been here at the start of our administration and have been reaping the profits by this point in time. So this global CEO conference of Forbes magazine is a very prestigious event, very significant taipans across the world were participants. We had close to about 500 of them present. And again, I'm not aware of any negative comments that we had. It was more of the nature of not having seized the opportunity when it presented itself earlier on. So through that fora, through the various trade roadshows that DTI, amongst others, has been undertaking, to my own efforts at being a salesman of expounding the characteristics of the country, we are trying to get interest, and I think we have been succeeding in generating interest in the country that has resulted in very significant investments to the tune of a 6-fold increase from the time we started. Now, with your cooperation, I'm sure we can do a lot better. No? So thinking about this question, more appreciation for your capacities, your particular areas of expertise, knowledge imbibed by our trade representatives makes them more efficient salespeople to help you grow your industry and help us grow the economy. So we ask for greater participation from you. Thank you.
Maraming salamat ho.
Thank you, Mr. Alberto. Yes, the next one is Mr. Ed De Jesus from ROM Electronics.
Magandang hapon po, Ginoong Pangulo. Next year, we'll be choosing your successor. My question is, what would you recommend to the next Philippine president in terms of the programs that the government should do to strengthen the Philippine electronics industry?
Well, I think we try to change, no, the attitude in the country, remove as much as possible the idea that all decisions have to start from a political decision, no, even economic decisions. Perhaps I should stress, look at the infrastructure growth that we've had. Now, by next year, we'll have something like 5% of our larger GDP earmarked for infrastructure support. It's currently 4%. Now, it is not just the idea of creating all of this infrastructure, but having the logic behind it. No? Why build this particular rail system, the NCR? Why go for a bus rapid transit system in Cebu? Why improve that particular port? Why move this airport? Why create new airports? And so on and so forth. It is not, traditionally, any infrastructure seems to be politically rewarded. You supported me, you get this infrastructure. What drives the infrastructure is the need expressed by the people. Is that particular farming community hampered by the lack of access to a market because there are no viable roads or no all-weather roads that enable them to bring the produce? Again, I mentioned the tourist areas that are very good tourist areas but are practically inaccessible, which are now very, very accessible. So, in essence, I guess we said in the beginning, good governance is good economics. We'd like to demonstrate to other politicians in the country that doing right by our people really redounds to their support, promoting that virtuous cycle of them being happy and you generating their support for you to be able to push, shall we say, the radical changes that you want to happen in society. I'm at the end of my term. I think my numbers are still very, very good. No? And I think that is a lesson to everybody, that you don't have to, shall we say, just play a political game, but actually doing right redounds to everybody's benefit. Hopefully that message is clear to all of those who are vying to replace me. And the hope is, and message of the party that I belong to is continuity. You know, we are just, in effect, we have just learned how to, shall we say, briskly walk. You know. Then since we already have that knowledge, perhaps from briskly walking to running is not that much of a giant step. And the need for continuity hopefully will enable us to be able to running this economy really to its fullest potential and having the maximum opportunities for our people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. De Jesus. How apt, Mr. President. This morning, we were just talking about how we can possibly speed the progress in this particular industry. That's one of the wish lists of our industry leaders. The next one who's going to ask the question is Mr. Mario Ravancho from Vishay, Philippines.
Good morning. Good afternoon, sir. The Philippine electronic industry in general applauds the Excellency for his trust on good governance, integrity, and transparency. It is unfortunate, however, that the electronics companies are still victims of red tape and corruption by the employees of the public sector. What measures are being undertaken to ensure that the administration's trust are trickled down even to the first-level officers?
Well, I think if you read today's papers, you will see that even our allies are being made to account by the ombudsman and the various courts. That I hopefully will send a message to everybody that corruption really is not tolerated. You have all of the websites that have been put in place to afford even anonymous tipsters the capacity to share with us leads to ferret out all of these corrupt individuals. On the positive end, we're considering, and I think we will be able to grant a salary standardization, a new round of salary standardization increases. The idea is to match the private sector by about 70% of what a private sector employee gets. And the bonuses will no longer be pro forma bonuses, but rather performance-based bonuses. The performance is measured by goals that have been enumerated by the different agencies as to their promises to their accomplishment promises by the end of the year. Their performance then is measured based on the goals that they themselves set, together with other agencies of government, and then they, in effect, determine the bonus. Now, their efficiencies will have a positive effect on their bonuses, and their inefficiencies, conversely, will have a negative effect on their own material gain. So those are amongst the innovations that we're trying to do. We admit that there are still instances of corruption. There are some agencies that have so much rooted corruption in them. But I guess the challenge is for us to continue weeding out these people and not just tolerating the situation. Perhaps, if I may just add, whenever anybody talks about corruption, they talk about the person in government. No? But what about the necessary partner who is the briber? No? A bribee doesn't exist without a briber. And the briber, I'm sure both of us are aware, I think we're old enough to hear that sa Tagalog, I think it's very clear, no? Yung nakikiusap, kaya nga nakikiusap, meron malabo. Okay. So I go back, no? That tells us review the system. What makes it so difficult to review? What is it in the law that makes it so difficult to comply that leads to all of these avenues or potential avenues for corruption? Then if both parties, no, both those that feel that it's easier to bribe and the person who actually accepts the bribe are, shall we say, brought to a new direction, then I think we eliminate that idea of corruption. Now, the red tape, again, no, anything made by man can be undone by man. Show us where suggestions, no, are very much welcome as to how to further improve the system. Just to give you an idea, no, as president, when we address, for instance, issues of water, very early on, we discovered that there is, I think, over 30 agencies that are handling various aspects of water. Those that use water as a resource for hydroelectric uses, those for irrigation, those for potable water, and the list goes on and on. Those that protect the watershed is a different entity from the one that manages the dam. Okay, so trying to do anything with water had to deal with these 30 agencies. That's why we appointed Babe Singson to be the water czar, to ensure that there's a cohesive program that addresses all of these various agencies' particular duties, needs, and concerns. But we also had to deal with a lot of the red tape. We also are subject to the judicial processes. We recently pointed out during the groundbreaking ceremony for the Supreme Court that there is a law, I understand it's under the BOT law, that says government cannot be issued a TRO when we are building infrastructure projects. The necessities for government to make a deposit are equivalent to the value of the property that is supposed to be expropriated. Unfortunately, some of our courts have gone to lower courts who are not actually authorized to hear it, delayed the whole process by determining proper valuation. So in effect, you don't get a TRO, but you're prevented from constructing, which was the whole concept behind not being allowed to issue TROs, no? So as not to delay the project that is supposed to be for the common good. But we also have to contend with that. So you are preaching to a very sympathetic ears that even government is subject to a lot of the red tape that perhaps could be improved. And all we can promise is that we are striving to eliminate a lot of these steps. Unfortunately, I don't have the data for me for all of the steps that have already been removed in various other aspects. But you're aware that when you had to register businesses before, how long it took. Now, I think there are very, very significant differences between when we started and where we are now. And hopefully, we will get even more and more efficiencies out of the bureaucracy, especially with the new concept of compensation. Thank you.
Salamat po.
Thank you, Mr. Rabancho. Mr. President, with your indulgence, if I can just follow up to that particular point, and if you allow me to bounce back the question to some of the industry leaders, if they have noticed any difference or any decrease in the corruption level, the bureaucracy, the red tape, since this administration has started. Do you mind if I ask that, Mr. President? So, I don't know who can answer, maybe Mr. La Chica. Okay, yes, go ahead. Ever since the administration started, they have been very serious about corruption control. Have you, in your experience?
Good afternoon, Mr. President. I'm not in a PEZA zone, so I don't have the luxury of being under the protection of Secretary De Lima. I run a R&D center here for microchip technology, and so we're not in a PEZA zone, we're an office. When I first came here, dealing with customs with just very minor shipments was very difficult. Mr. President, when you took office, you immediately went after a re-modification of customs, and it has improved dramatically since I've been here. It's a very, very noticeable improvement. So, thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure the Commissioner of Customs took note of your comments, which will inspire him to further improve the work of Customs.
Thank you. Our last question, Mr. Oh, you want to add something? Yes, go ahead.
Elmer LaPena from Excelitas Technologies. Good afternoon, Mr. President. You know, it's actually very evident at the airport, and I do a lot of traveling. So when I come to the airport now, it's much easier to go through the immigrations and customs. So I applaud that. The problem I face is the waiting time, the traffic up in the air. Just last Saturday, it took us an hour and a half just to land the plane, and many other planes had to be diverted to Clark. So my question is, 7 years ago or so, I remember or I recall a plan to relocate the airport to Clark and then to build a high-speed train going to Clark. And none of this has happened. Could you please comment on that? Thank you very much.
The plan was, well, the plan started 3 administrations before us. A Spanish company was supposed to build it, eventually became a Chinese company. The Chinese company, we had to pay to the tune of something like close to $400 million. The loan became due and demandable from being a concessionary loan. And I would invite you to go to Malolos to see what we got for $400 million, which is about a kilometer's worth of columns. And also the plants, by the way. The viability of a railway system, especially high-speed, commercial viability, that is still under question. No. That I think is the major determinant. The Clark now is envisioned to service basically both the central and northern Luzon markets, and attempt to decongest a bit NAIA. NAIA has been subject to several proposals ranging from a new runway with a new terminal so that there is no more intersecting lanes. The exclusion zone around Malacanang actually has also been compressed to allow more so-called more events, more takeoffs and landings to fully maximize our current runways. There are studies ongoing already of relocating NAIA. Inside NAIA itself, you know, I'm sorry, I will tend to tell you my problems in trying to effect changes there. There are so many housing that was granted over the years to so many different entities that we will now have to manage to get back the land that is already in NAIA. There is so many built-up areas adjacent to it and within it that needs a lot of social preparation to just be able to fully recover it. And having completed that, there is also, I don't think anybody's talking about a 25-year lifespan after having undergone all of that. So there's a current proposal to move it perhaps somewhere near the Manila Bay, you know, that will be good for not just five years or so, or 10 years or so. Perhaps it's also a symptom of the growth in our tourism market from about 3 million when we started. I think last year it was about 5 million already. So the domestic tourist arrivals is also, we've changed the 2011 targets to, we reached the 2016 regional targets sometime in 2011, late 2011 or early 2012. They revised it to practically double the original targets. And I think that particular target has already been breached, if I'm not mistaken, which is, and of course, shall we say, our airlines are also coping up with the very increased demand. Lest I cast aspersions on them, I'd like to try and be sympathetic that the confidence that led them to refleet, in over 100 planes 3 years ago, and I'm sure more, even so now, and more of the longer haul planes, is indicative of their exponential growth, which adds to the congestion. And as a last point, often I'm told that the reason that of all of the delays, it is announced on the planes that I am either landing or taking off. I am the most convenient excuse because nobody can ask me if that really happened. But the records are present. Maximum of 15 minutes from the time I entered the plane and the door is closed to our leaving the area. It's no longer the 1 hour requirement that existed previously. And we strive to make that even less. We want to disrupt as little as possible. So 15 is the average, but I think we manage 10 and below from different times. So when I go around the country or I have to leave the country. So I'm already announcing that we are not the cause of the delay next month when I go to Malaysia for the ASEAN Summit.
Our last question, Mr. President, will come from Mr. Cesar Augusto from Cebu Mitsumi.
Maayong hapon, Mr. President.
Maayong hapon.
Again, thank you for gracing this important forum for SEIPI. So my question would be, our organization, SEIPI, is currently developing product and technology roadmap of the industry that aims to identify specific technologies that companies should develop and focus in the next 3 to 5 years. The general view is the industry to move towards higher value activities such as research and development to arrest the drop in total Philippine economic export as far as electronics is concerned. My question is, it has been echoed in this morning's forum, the first part, that we want to be not the value creation not only happens in Silicon Valley or technology innovation in Boston or in the US or in the UK, but hopefully here in the Philippines. So my question is, what can the government do or is currently doing or plans to do to attract still on FDI or investments in general, specifically in the area of research and development for engineers and technology?
Perhaps, well, number one, we tasked the DOST, said, and this is for government's needs. Whenever we purchase any technological device, let me make the example even clearer. We had, before our administration took office, there was a program called Telepono sa Barangay. It was something like 5 billion pesos worth, which was meant to provide communications for all the barangays. So it set up the infrastructure for it, and unfortunately, not a single phone call was coursed through that Telepono sa Barangay program. In fact, we threw away 5 billion. Now, I asked our Secretary of Science and Technology, shouldn't we start investing in people to keep abreast of the latest in technology and see how it's applicable to our needs, so that we are able to prevent the situation where we are very dependent on the salesmen of the various technology who pick things out of their shelves and force us to buy things that we don't need. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's ridden a car in the Philippines with a heater in the seat. So obviously it's a long-term investment, but if in the Telepono sa Barangay proposal, before it became a program, somebody said, cellular technology has reached this maturity that it is far easier to roll out cell phones rather than build all of these landlines. Okay? Just a case in point, I understand PLDT was able to put in something like 2 million landlines by the time cellular technology was uploading. I'm sure we're beyond 90 million cell phones in this country with 100 million of our population. May I also comment that perhaps we shouldn't, the drop in exports currently is obviously a reflection of the world economy. But the American economy is picking up. I think the Chinese economy is stabilizing. Europe, I think with the inclusion of all of these refugees, undoubtedly will grow at some point in time. There are more people who will need everything, no? Communications, the cars, the mass transport systems, all of these will not be in their modern form without the outputs from your industry. Now, what is government doing? Of course, ADMATEL is already a solid evidence of our commitment to you. Basically, you're the experts in your industry. You tell us how we can help you grow. You told us about the lack of the right skill sets. We partnered with that, with TESDA amongst others. The state universities and colleges have also been mandated to make themselves more relevant to their communities. Let me just give you the idea of where it started from. Dr. Arboleda from Bicol State University did a lot of research in coconut, and his main point to us was Bicol State University primarily services a region that deals with coconut. Why is it that all of their studies are rice and corn related? So he studied the coconut. He's the founder, the inventor of coco coir and various other materials apart from copra. So this is the example we keep telling all the state universities and colleges. Adapt and be relevant to the communities you serve. And if there is a growth of manufacturing, then obviously they will focus on how to impart the necessary skill sets to support the manufacturing sector in their particular localities. Then there is a mechanism whereby we check. The support given to them is somehow conditional on their being more relevant. They are also part of the process that sends us goals that they wish to attain. And we agree on the set goals, which in turn prompts those who are in control of the funds to open the faucet more or to close the faucet to non-responsive entities. So I guess it's twofold. Government is ready to help. You are the experts. You tell us what areas you think we can be of help. Then we will explore and how to best be of service to you in growing our economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you very much. One last point, Mr. President. I won't feel like I did my job as a moderator if I don't go back to the issue, one last, very quick one about the controlled chemicals. I just did a live report for our noontime newscast saying that the industry is, from what I gathered this morning, is hoping that there would be some directive, some sort of maybe even an executive order or something that can help them, because as I understand, a lot of their permits are expiring at the end of this month, October 31. A lot of their permits are expiring with regards to handling the controlled chemicals. What is your message, sir, about that?
The Secretary of Interior and Local Government tells me that he has already told the Chief of the Philippine National Police to extend these permits. I'll leave it up to them to determine exactly how much. Now, by how long the extension will be. You have to bear in mind that the Philippines is not exempt from facing the world of terrorism. A lot of these chemicals have multi-use. But in the same token, that I don't know how many of us are aware, for instance, that fertilizers are also a controlled substance. And there are mechanisms already involved to be able to ensure that this do not fall into inappropriate hands. But unfortunately, it still does. So I think you will bear with us that there is a balancing act necessary, protecting the public welfare, and at the same time assisting you in terms of not adding undue burdens on you. Now, in this country, we have a saying, yung gusto, walang imposible, pag ayaw, walang posible. Gusto natin magkaroon ng solusyon dito. Kaya palagay ko posible magkaroon ng solusyon dito. And if my answers are a bit tentative, to be honest with you, I got in the briefer, which I read about 2 hours ago, that there was this problem that started sometime in July. This has not been brought to my attention. Otherwise, there would have been more, shall we say, definitive action already by this point in time. Now, I can't blame the PNP. We are in a, notice also when you read the papers how many people are being charged for not completely adhering to the last colon and semicolon and comma of the various rules, regulations, and laws. So there is that tendency to overcompensate. But again, I think you have a legitimate concern. The PNP also has a legitimate obligation. We can meet both ends if both parties are willing to compromise a bit. So I'm sure there'll be a solution, and hopefully that solution will come with a very efficient Secretary of the Interior, like in the person of Mel. I'm sure this will come before, way before Christmas time, lest that become another issue.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for graciously answering our questions. We will now move on to the photo opportunity part. May I request the President to please remain on stage? And we'll ask the SEIPI board members and the annual business partners and speakers and the panelists to please come on stage for a photo opportunity with the President. Just the mic, ito dito lang. Pati din natin. Sige. Didn't practice the blocking. Where can I stay? I didn't practice the blocking. I don't know, this is not my... That's the end of our program with the President. We would like to thank again our guest of honor, President Benigno Aquino. We would like to express our appreciation for your presence and for making this occasion a truly meaningful one. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm round of applause, President Benigno Aquino III.